Okay, today's daf we're learning is Eruvin Nun Dalid. Today's daf is sponsored by Ben Teitelbaum in honor of Melissa Raffaeli and by Deborah Dixon in honor of Audrey Levant, in lieu of the Siyum and celebration we should be having at the completion of a year-long Parsha Chavruta. Looking forward to learning next year. And by Yoni and Clara Dalgan, wishing our children a Chag Sukkot Sameach. We wish we were able to celebrate together instead of in Bidud. I think a lot of us are feeling that way. Okay. Starting with, we finished on Eruvin Nun Gimel, we finished the last story at the top of Nun Daled with Bruria. And what was the main message of the story, which is something we're going to hear over and over again in today's daf, which is the importance of learning out loud, expressing things in words. We all know that when we speak and we say something and express it, it means more to us. We have to clarify more what we're saying. We have to be very clear about what we're saying. We have to understand it really well in order to be able to say it out loud. That's one possibility. Another, we talked yesterday about focus. Sometimes when you're reading, you could just kind of miss things, but if you say them out loud, it helps you to focus. I know when I learn personally, right, different people learn well in different ways. When I say things, I understand them much better than if I just read them, or worse, when I hear someone else reading them, it's much more difficult for me to comprehend them. So if I say them myself, I understand them much better. Today's daf, the main topic, it's very simple, is what learning Torah does for you, how important it is, and number two, how you can make sure not to forget what you learn. Okay, this is good for all of us learning Daf Yomi, which it's very easy to often forget what we learn. So they're going to tell you all sorts of things about how your Torah remains with you, kind of tactics, which we also discussed yesterday and we'll continue today. You would think it would be organized by topic. It's a little disjointed. It's going to jump from thing to thing, back and forth a little bit, but those are the main ideas of today's daf. Tana Talmid Echad Hayalo LeRabbi Eliezer. We're now on the fourth line. Shahaya Shoneh Belachash. Okay, just like the student that Bruria kicked because he wasn't learning out loud, also Rabbi Eliezer had a student that way. Lachar shalosh shanim shachach talmudo, and after 3 years he forgot everything he learned. Okay, so again we see this isn't a good method of learning. If they're already talking about a Talmid of Rabbi Eliezer, they're now mentioning a bit of a non sequitur. Tana Talmid Echad Hayalo LeRabbi Eliezer. There are some people who try to connect this. Shnitchayev Sreifa. Some people say Nitchayev Sreifa means he was supposed to get burned by the court. Okay, he did something bad. Some people say no. What he did was he didn't express his words. He didn't express his Torah in words. He didn't say it out loud. But hard to imagine that that's really the pshat here. But at least they're trying to connect these two. Nitchayev Sreifa lemakom, to God. Okay, it was between him and God. Amru, in up in the heavens, they said, Hanicholo Adam Gadol Shimesh. He was in the vicinity of Rabbi Eliezer, who was such a great Talmid Chacham, that we should pardon him for what he did. It's a bit of a strange thing. Why should we pardon him just because he learned with Rabbi Eliezer? Because in fact, if he really did something wrong, he should be punished. And anyway, they think they're trying to say how important it is that when you learn, maybe they're also adding this element that you should learn from someone of import, someone, a big Talmid Chacham, it'll give you zchuyot, merits. Amar le Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shmuel says to Rav Yehuda, there's a term he often uses when he just talks to Rav Yehuda, Shinina, my very smart student. Ptach pumecha k'chei. Open your mouth and speak words of Torah. Ptach pumecha tnei. Open your words and speak words of Mishnah. Ki hechi titkayim bach, so that the words of Torah will stay with you. V'tori chayai, and you'll have long life, longevity. Shenemal, ki chayim hem lemotzaehem. They say the words of Torah, there's a verse from Mishlei, the words of Torah bring life to those who find it, or those who seek it. Or it's really those who find it. Ulecho b'saro marpeh, and it heals all of your body. So now they say, al tikre lemotzaehem, don't read it as the people who find it. Ela lemotziehem bepeh. It's those who bring them out in words. Again, those who speak words of Torah, it will be, right, they will find life. So that's how you'll have longevity. Now we're going to get a little bit off topic, and interestingly, it's Chag Sukkot, and we read Kohelet on Sukkot, which is always a very difficult book. There's all these contradictions, right? On the one hand, it says, you should fill your life with important, meaningful things, and then it says, well, everything's just hevel, and it's all, people die, and you may as well enjoy life. So now we're going to get some statements, since Shmuel said to Rabbi Yehuda, Shinina, and then he said some things to him. Here we're going to see something else that he's basically going to tell Rabbi Yehuda some good advice, which is interesting advice to be hearing from Shmuel, a little bit surprising. And there are those who understand this not according to the pshat. I'll read it according to the pshat. Maybe I'll suggest possible other suggestion, but chitof ve'echol chitof ve'ishtei. Grab food and eat it, grab drink and drink it. Da'alma da'azlina minei ki'ilu ladame, because the world that you live in is like a big wedding. What happens at a wedding? We all know we spend a lot of time getting ready for a wedding. And in the end, it's one day and it's over. And that's it. And that's what life is like. Life is fleeting, so you may as well enjoy it while you're in it. Okay? Amarle Rav LeRav Hamnuna, along these lines, Rav says to Rav Hamnuna, Banai im yesh lach hitiv lach. If you have money, enjoy it. Use it. She'ein b'sha'ol ta'anug ve'ein lamavet yitma'ameh, because there's no pleasures in the sha'ol, right? That's the depths when you go down, when you die. And ein lamavet yitma'ameh, the death is not going to wait for you. It's going to come right at you. Ve'im tomar aniach lebanai. Now here there's a lot of different ways where you put the comma in the sentence. What chok means, does chok mean a rule? Does chok often means food? Lechem chuki. So im tomar aniach lebani chok v'sha'ol miyagid lach. Or aniach lebanai chok v'sha'ol miyagid lach. Okay, there's different ways of reading it. But if you say, I want to leave it for my children, I don't want to use up all my money, I want to leave for my children. This is the way, we normally plan in this kind of manner. Well, he's saying don't do that, because b'nei adam domim le'isvei sadeh. Halalu notzitzim v'halalu novlim. Also very unclear what this means, right? People are like things that grow in the ground. Some of them make it and some of them don't, right? I planted some flowers outside my window. Some of them totally died. Some of them didn't, even though I did the exact same thing to all of them and they're right next to each other, right? You just don't really know. So here we're going to say that so different ways of understanding this. Either it means, some people say it means, look, you don't know who's going to live and who's going to die and who's going to make it and who's not, and you may as well just enjoy life, right? Because we don't understand any of this. Some people say, no, your children, you're going to die, but your children will be poreach. They're going to make their own living. You don't need to support your children. Your children are capable of supporting themselves. Okay, therefore, enjoy your own money and let your children fend for themselves, and hopefully they'll make it. That's one way of reading it. There's a whole bunch of different ways of reading it. But it's also the way to read this statement. If you say, Aniach lebanai chok, I'm going to leave them food, or I'm going to leave them chok b'sha'ol miyagid lach. In other words, when you're dead, you're not going to know whether they got the food or not. You're not going to know what they're going to do with the money. Maybe they'll spend it on drugs and drinking, and who knows what they're going to do with the money. So you know what you're going to do with your money, so you may as well do it. And yes, Caroline, I was thinking exactly that. Ingrid can be married, for tomorrow we may die, right? Exactly. It's exactly what the Gemara is saying here. Okay, which is very interesting to find this in the Gemara, right? You would think you wouldn't find it in the Gemara. I thought of one possible reading, this chatof echol chatof ishtei, and particularly we're talking about it in the context of this whole daf, which is all about learning Torah. Maybe it's an analogy, it's a metaphor for learning Torah. Drink it all up. In other words, get in all the Torah you can, because you won't be learning Torah in Olam Haba, right? That's not, you can read all different people say what Olam Haba is going to be like, but many people think, right, you're not going to be learning Torah there, so get it all in now and enjoy it now. Of course, it doesn't exactly relate to don't leave anything for your children, right? It's not exactly the theme there. So probably this really does mean the pshat, even though it's a little hard to get. And that's why it reminded me, it's not from Kohelet, but it reminded me of Kohelet and all those inner contradictions. And on the one hand saying this, on the one hand saying that. And obviously we have to come to some happy medium between them, right? There's these concepts that we live with and we have to kind of put them all together, right? We're always living with different things that seem to contradict each other in our lives. Okay, moving back to the importance of Torah. If you don't have anyone to escort you, and it was dangerous on the roads, so what do? Yasok b'Torah, the Torah, start learning Torah. Remember we talked about the person who went over the tchum because he wasn't paying attention, he was learning Torah. Maybe that's why he was learning Torah on the way. So you should learn Torah, that will protect you. Shene'emar ki levayat chen hem. Right? Because, and this is a verse from Mishlei, we're going to start quoting all sorts of verses in Mishlei that talk about the importance of Torah, just like we did before, Ki chayim hem lemotzayehem, likewise here. Okay, Levayat chen, it's going to be a graceful escort for you. But the whole pasuk says, Levayat chen hem lerashecha, for your head, va'anakim legargarotecha, and they're like chains around your neck. So now they're going to explain what this means. Chains meaning like a necklace, a nice chain. So, chash b'rosho yasok b'Torah, very famous line. We always quote this in my house, right? You have a headache, go sit and learn Torah. That'll make you feel better. Shene'emar ki levayat chen hem l'rashecha. I hope that you feel this way. I know I feel this way. Sometimes you're having a really crazy day and lots of things going on. And I just sit and learn, and I just focus on my learning. I block out everything else that's going on. And, you could see why they would say, even though on the one hand, if you have a bad headache, it's not so easy to learn. But the idea being it distracts you from other things, and you can absorb yourself in that and forget about all your troubles. If you have a sore throat, yasok b'torah. This I've been struggling with, right? With my throat. It doesn't always help me teaching. But anyway, right, this kind of is the opposite of if you keep speaking words of Torah, maybe you'll end up with a sore throat. But anyway, chash b'grono yasok b'torah. Learn Torah will help your throat. Shneimar v'anakim legargarotecha. Right? I know people who, when they have a sore throat, they wrap a scarf around their neck to protect from a draft. So here, it's exactly what's going on. Anakim legargarotecha, it protects your neck. Chash b'me'av yasok b'torah shneimar. Another verse in Mishlei. Rifaot ti it's 1 second. Lisharecha. I'm trying to remember how you write this. Yeah, lisharecha. The pasuk is this. Rifaot tihi lisharecha v'shikoi la'atzmotecha. Okay, it should be shikoi, like a drink to your bones. Okay, sharecha is your navel. So it should be healing for your navel. So therefore, if you have stomach ache, chash b'me'av yasok b'torah because of that. Chash b'atzmotav, if you're having an issue with your bones, yasok b'torah, iki bones, shenemar v'shikoi la'atzmotecha. It should be like drink, liquid, to your bones, like the marrow of your bones. Chash b'kol gufo, what if you have a problem in your whole body? Yasok b'torah, shenemar u'lechol b'sarom marpeh. Okay, it heals your whole body, it's whole body experience. Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Chia. Bo re'eh shelo k'midat HaKadosh Baruch Hu midat basar v'adam. Okay, they're now going to take this pasuk l'chol b'sarom marpeh and compare this to medication. Okay, this is something we all know to be the case. Adam noten sam l'chavero. So we're going to compare the way it is with God and the way it is by humans. So if you take a drug, okay, you take some medicine, noten sam l'chavero, right? Someone prescribes you medicine. Lizeh yafeh u'lizeh kasheh. It's good for one part of your body, but it causes problems in a different part of your body. There's always side effects. We all know, you could read the whole long list of side effects of almost every medication. And what do they say? Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu eino ken, natan Torah liYisrael, sam chayim lekol gufo. But the drug of Torah is a drug that heals your entire body. Shneimar u'lechol b'sarom marpeh. So again, like I said, this daf talks about how important, this section is all about the importance of learning Torah and what it does for your body. Amar Rabbi Ami, you would have thought it's interesting what it does for your mind, but really what it does for your mind is also for your body, right? As I see people writing in the chat, right? It's like a therapy. It's good for you. Amar Rabbi Ami, my dichtiv ki na'im ki tishmerein bebitnecha yikonu yachdav al sfatecha. It's pleasant to you if you hold them in your stomach. Yikonu yachdav al sfatecha, and you prepare them on your lips. We're going to go back again to the importance of speaking. Ematay divrei Torah na'im, when are divrei Torah pleasant? Bizman shetishmorein bebitnecha, when you keep them in your stomach, you hold them inside. Ve'ematay tishmorein bebitnecha, well, how do you do that? Bizman shikonu yachdav al sfatecha. It all goes back to if you speak your words clearly and you express them, then you'll be shomer bebetem. Bebetem really means here in your heart, right? Usually when we talk about holding things into your stomach is not a good thing, but holding things in your heart, that's where we keep them in your heart, and then they'll be na'im, they'll be pleasant. Rabbi Zera Amar Mehacha, he learns it from a different verse. Simcha le'ish b'ma'anet piv. Happiness is for the person in what he speaks. V'davar b'ito matov, and everything in its right time, right? How good is that? So we're going to have two ways of darshaning this. The first is going to connect to our topic. Matai simcha le'ish. When is a man happy? Bizman shema'aneh b'piv. When he answers with his mouth. Okay, again, speaking the words of Torah. Lishnachrina, a different way to understand this verse. It's when will a person be happy with what a person speaks? Bizman shedavar b'ito. Right, this is yesterday. I wrote this for Torah that connected the daf with the times, right, with Sukkot. It's a good way of connecting, right? When you learn something and then you connect it to something going on right then, that's the most pleasurable type of learning. Matov, right? Then it will be great, your learning of Torah. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Mehacha, ki karov elecha davar ma'od beficha ubelvavcha la'asoto. Right, this is a pasuk from the end of Sefer Dvarim we just read. Ki karov elecha davar beficha, it's very close to your mouth, ubelvavcha la'asoto, right? To your mouth and to your heart to do. Matai karov elecha, bizman shebeficha ubelvavcha la'asoto. Again, the importance of expressing it in your mouth and keeping it in your heart. Rav Amar, again, they always associate with the heart with the brain also. Rav Amar Mehacha. Let's learn it from this pasuk. Ta'avat libo natatalo. God will give us what we desire in our hearts. V'areshet tzfatav b'manata sela. And this is, by the way, areshet tzfatenu, we say in the davening of Rosh Hashanah, we just said. What's areshet? Our bakashot, our requests. The requests of your lips, God will not prevent from coming true. Ematai ta'avat, so how did they darshan this? Ematai ta'avat libo natatalo. Again, we're going to keep saying, if you say things out loud, that's the ideal. So they're connecting. They're saying the first part is dependent on the second part of the pasuk. When will you get what your heart desires? When you didn't hold back from expressing things in words. Rava says, wait a minute. This pasuk seems to contradict. If you look at the pshat of this pasuk, it says on the one hand, Tavat libo natatalo, God gives us what our hearts desire. Now, what does it mean your heart's desire? It's something you didn't express, something you just thought in your hearts. Uktiv, but the second part says, Areshet tzfatav b'manata sela. God gives you what you request with your mouth. So how do they explain the contradiction? Do you need to express it with your mouth, or is it enough just to think it in your heart and God will give it to you? Zacha ta'avat libo natatalo. Lo zacha areshet tzfatav b'manata sela. It's a matter of what level you attain. If you're at a high level, then you can just think things in your heart and God will, you can request things in your heart and God will give it to you. If you're not as worthy, then you have to express them and then God will give them to you. Obviously, we all know we ask for things, we don't always get them, right? But this is the idea that you should, right? You can do it with your heart, but also express your requests. Tana debei Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, kol makom shenemar netzach sela ve'ed, because we mentioned this word sela. Sela is always a hard word to understand. What exactly does sela mean? Anytime it says netzach sela ve'ed, ein lo hefsek olamit. It means it's going to last forever. Netzach, by the way, I looked up Wikipedia last night. If you want, you can look. There's an entry on sela. Okay, if you want to know what sela means and different interpretations, you can look there. We don't have time for it today, but anyway, good reading. Ein lo hefsek olamit, netzach dichtiv ki lo la'olam ariv v'lo la'netzach ektsof. This is from the Haftorah on Yom Kippur. I will not forever be angry at you. Okay, here you see netzach connected with le'olam. All these words, netzach, sela, ve'ed, are all going to be associated in verses with the word olam, which is forever, and that's why they're associated with forever. Sela dechtiv kasher shamanu came ra'inu be'ir Hashem tzvaot be'ir Eloheinu Elohim yichoneneha ad olam sela. In this city, God will establish it on forever sela. So sela is also forever. Va'ed dechtiv Hashem yimloch le'olam va'ed. God will rule forever. Again, these are all themes of the Yamim Noraim. Siman anakim lechayav luchot charut. Okay, these are a siman for the upcoming sections. Amar Rabbi Elazar, my dichtiv anakim legargorotecha. We mentioned this thing about the chains around someone's neck. What is this? When you have a necklace around your neck, it's very loose. It hangs loose on your neck, unless you have a choker, right? It usually hangs loose. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. Right? They explain it sometimes goes under your beard. Okay, since most of you are women, it probably doesn't go under your beard, but sometimes maybe it goes under your shirt or something you're wearing. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. Then Talmudomot kayem biyadecha. If you make yourself like nireh ve'eno nireh, okay, then your learning will be sustainable. Being lav, ein Talmudomot kayem biyado. What is this nireh ve'eno nireh? So some people say you don't hang out in the shuk a lot. You basically sit and learn. So people don't see you out and about because you're just sitting in the Beit Midrash learning or in your house learning. Some people say it's, and this actually I associate more with, and this is going to connect with other themes. If you're arrogant, you make yourself known. Right? If you're not arrogant in your learning, then, you learn, you do your own thing. Sometimes people hear you, sometimes they don't. That's nireh ve'eno nireh. Then your learning will survive. But we're going to have the whole theme of arrogance and how anyone who's arrogant with their Torah is not going to be sustainable. Okay, this is a pasuk in Shir Shirim. Your cheeks are like a very pleasant smell, or like the place where the spices are growing, like the aruga, I forget the word for it, but where everything is growing. People, what do people do when you have stuff growing? They step on it, okay? It's something that people walk on. And you make yourself, in other words, number one, you put yourself low, like the arugata bosem, thank you, a bed of spices, and you're someone that everybody wants. What spices? Everybody wants spices. They want to take from your spices. So they want to take from your Torah. Then Talmudom Mitkayim. V'im lav, ein Talmudom Mitkayim. So again, the theme of arrogance, right, is not going to help you in your learning. V'amar Rabbi Elazar, my dechtiv luchot even. Okay, this is describing the luchot. They were luchot that were made of, the tablets were made of stone. Im adam mesimet lichayav. Right, one second. This is, right, shtei luchot. You do it, luchot even ktuvim be'etzba Elohim. So what do they say here? Luchot, they darshan like lichayav. If you make mesimet lichayav ke'even zo she'ena nimchet. Okay, if you make yourself very diligent, okay, your cheeks diligent, meaning you constantly talk to Divrei Torah, that won't be white like a stone that doesn't get worn out, then Talmudom Mitkayim biyado. V'im lav, ein Talmudom Mitkayim biyado. And if not, it won't be sustainable. But Amar Rabbi Elazar, my dechtiv charut ala luchot. If already we're darshaning the luchot, let's darshan. What does it mean charut ala luchot? Now they're describing the first luchot, the ones that got broken. Charut means engraved forever. If they hadn't broken, they would have been engraved forever, meaning we never would have forgotten any Torah. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar, he darshans it differently. Ein kol umav lashon sholetet behem shneimar charut al tikre charut ela cherut. Freedom. Charut from the lashon of cherut, which is freedom. We would have been free from all the other nations ruling over us. Right. This is a good, right, saying, oh, how ideal our lives would have been had this not happened. Amar Rav Matna. Interesting, it's Rav Matna who says this because he's going to darshan the pasuk matana. Okay, and then matna is the same letters as matana. My dechtiv umi midbar matana. Okay, this is a verse from Bamidbar, which we're going to darshan the whole thing. Okay, the whole pasuk reads, Be'er chafruas sarim karu anidivei am b'mechokek b'meshotam. This is the Shirat HaBe'er. Umi midbar matana, umi matana nachliel, umi nachliel bamot, umi bamot hagay asher b'stei Moab, v'rosh ha'piska v'nishkafal pnei Yeshimon. If you want to see it in English, it's Bamidbar 21, Psukim 18 to 20. Okay, so now, it's describing basically all these different places. Umi midbar matana. So what does this mean, midbar matana? They're going to darshan this. From a desert, a gift. People just trample in the desert. If you put yourself like someone who people trample over, again, you put yourself low. Right? This is always a good thing to be low, right? We see this all in the davening all the time in Yom Kippur and Slichot, all about we're nobodies and God is everything. So then your learning will be sustainable. Soon we're going to darshan the whole verse, but first we get a story about it. Rava Bered Rav Yosef Rachama, Rava the son of Rav Yosef Rachama, this is the famous Rava. Haveli Milta Rav Yosef Bade. He got Rav Yosef very angry at him. Rav Yosef was the generation before him. He got Rav Yosef very angry with him. The whole story, I think it's in Nidarim. There's a note in the Steins that tells you all about it if you want to read up about it. And basically he was arrogant with his learning and he got Rav Yosef upset. So it became Erev Yom Kippur, and he says, I better go and ask for forgiveness. Amar Ezel ve'efaise. So he says, I'm going to go and make peace with him. So he got there and he saw the shamash was mixing the wine, right, diluting the wine. Amar le havli ve'emzege. Rava says, give it to me, I'll prepare the cup of wine for him. Ana yavle mazge. Okay, so he prepares the wine and he goes to bring it in front of Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was blind, so he didn't see Rava in front of him. Kiditame, but when he tasted the wine, Amar, Dame hai maziga lemaziga de Rava Bered. Rav Yosef, I recognize this wine. This must be Rava's wine. Okay, you could tell, amazing how his sense of taste was so strong, right? Often when you don't have one sense, your other senses are so strong. He knew exactly this is Rava's wine. Barchama, Amarle Anahu. So in fact, Rava says, yes, it is me. Amarle, loteti vakarach adam mifarshatli hane kai. He wants to basically test him and see, did he really do tshuva and is he still arrogant or not? So he says, don't sit down until you explain to me the following verses. My dichtiv, umi midbar matana, umi natana nachliel, umi nachliel bamot, umi bamot hagai. So Rava says to him, Amarle, im adam asim atzmo ki midbar zeh shakol dashimba, Torah nitna lo b'matana. If you do that, right, you put yourself like a desert, that you put yourself low, then the Torah will be given to you as a gift. Once you get it as a gift, nachalo el, God brings you into his, right, you get territory with God. Shneamar, umimatana nachli el, right, nachala el. Once you do that, you rise to greatness. Shneamar, uminachli el bamot, bamot are the high places. V'megis libo, but if you get arrogant about that, Hakadosh Baruch Hu must be low. God will bring you down. Shneamar, umi bamot hagai, right, it's describing this up-down cycle. V'im chozer bo hakadosh baruch hu magbiho. And if you go back and you become humble again, God will raise you up again. Shneimar kol gei yinaseh. That's a different verse. That's not from this pasuk. It's just saying God will then raise you up. Amar Rav Huna, my dechtiv chayatcha yeshvu ba, tachim b'tovatcha la'ani Elohim. If your animals dwell in it, then God will basically make a feast for the poor person. Im adam mesim atzmo kechaya zo shedoreset v'ochelet. What does an animal do? It grabs its food and it immediately eats it, right? Once it takes its food, it eats it right away. So they're saying, again, different ways of understanding this. Likewise, Divrei Torah. If as soon as your teacher teaches it, you review it and review it and review it, then, right, you capture that Torah as soon as you get it, then you'll learn well. That you make yourself dirty, you soil yourself and you eat. Some people say that means that you're not particular about honor to yourself, right? You don't care how you look or how people perceive you. If you do that with your Torah, again, you're not searching the kavod. Then Talmudomit Kayim Biyado. V'im lav, ein Talmudomit Kayim Biyado. V'im oseh ken. And now what's the second part of the verse? If you do this, what will happen? Just like we saw before, the Torah will be given to you as a gift. Here, so, Kadosh Baruch Hu oselo seuda batzmo. God himself makes you a meal. Now, whether it means a meal, food, or maybe gives you the Torah before you like a meal. Shneimar tachim b'tovatcha la'ani Elohim. Amar Rav Chia bar Abba Amar B'Yochanan. My dechtiv notzar te'ena yochal pirya. Right, when the fig grows and then you'll eat the fruits. Lama nimshalu, right, and it's a mashal for the Torah. Lama nimshalu, a parable for Torah. Lama nimshalu divrei Torah ketena. Why is it likened to a teina? What's unique about a fig? Ma teina zo kol zman shadam memashmesh b'motzei b'teinim. Every time you go to the tree, there's always new figs growing. Af divrei Torah kol zman shadam hogeh behem motzei behem tam. The more you learn, you always find something new in them. Right? It's very true. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani. My dichtiv ayelet ahavim v'yalat chen. Okay, this is a doe that is beloved and the mountain goat that is graceful. Lama nimshalu divrei Torah. Again, it's saying Torah is like ayelet ahavim v'yalat chen. Okay, this is a pasuk in Mishlei, and the pasuk continues. Dadeha yarvucha b'chol eit. Okay, her breast will not sure yarvucha will. You'll drink in her breasts at all times. You'll always be in love, right? Dealing with the love of these all the time, which is obviously for Divrei Torah. So now we're going to explain why are Divrei Torah to an ayelet, to a doe. Lomar lecha ma ayala rachma tzar vechaviva al bo'ala kol sha'a v'sha'a k'sha'a rishona, because her womb is narrow, so she's always when she mates, it's always pleasant for the one who mates with her, like the first time. The learning is always exciting like the first time that you learn. It brings grace to those who learn. Why are they like a breast? Every time the child goes, there's always more milk. Right? Divrei Torah, like that. Every time you learn them, same idea. You'll always find something. So what's this? Kigon Rabbi Elazar ben Pidat. Okay, like the story we're going to hear. He was so engrossed in Torah that he would go to the upper part of the Shuk and Tzipori, and he would leave his cloak in the bottom, in the Shuk HaElyon of, he would learn in the lower part, and he would leave his cloak in the upper part. Okay, this is kind of like the absent-minded person, that you're so focused on your Torah that you forget about everything else, and therefore he left his cloak there. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar, Pam Achad Ba'adam, and we're going to talk soon about this idea of focus, okay, and the idea, the ability to focus when you're learning Torah, which I think many of us struggle with, right? It's not always easy to focus. I know when I learn, I can learn at one time of day and there's things distracting me and I can't focus on what I'm doing. And at other times, I'm able to really focus. So here we're going to see. Okay, because he was so amazing about his Torah and was so focused on it, he was rewarded that one time someone came to steal his cloak because he left it in the middle of the shuk. And there was what's a saraf? I don't remember the translation, if someone can help me with it. But there was some creature that was basically protecting it, okay? It was a poisonous snake, okay? So there was a poisonous snake there guarding it. So basically someone went to steal it and he didn't steal it because there was a poisonous snake on it. So you see, God protected him. Tana debei Rav Anan. My dichtiv. Okay, we're taking another verse now. This is a verse from Shirat Dvorah. Okay, in the Song of Devorah in Sefer Shoftim. After they win the battle, she sings the song. Ruchvei atonot schorot, those who ride white donkeys. Yoshvei al midin, those who sit on rich cloths. V'hochei al derech, and they walk on the path. Sicho. This is their speech. Ruchvei atonot elu talmidei chachamim shemalchim me'ir le'ir medina medina lemod Torah. Okay, these are talmidei chachamim that ride on donkeys to go from place to place to learn. Tzchorot, what does it mean? They're white. Shosino tam kitzoraim. They teach in such a clear way that is clear like noon. Yoshvei al midin, what does this mean? Well, they learn midin instead of from these rich cloths. Shedanim din emet, from the lashon of din. They rule. They sit in court. They hold court and hold a true court. Lamito, for truth for truth's sake. V'hochei, what's this? Hochei al derech sicho. So now we're going to learn hochei al derech. Hochei elu baalei mikra. Those are those who learn Torah. Al derech elu baalei mishnah. Sicho elu baalei Talmud. This is always the PR job for the Talmud learners, right? If you learn Talmud, that's the idea, right? Hochei, you're just on the way. That's the mikra. That's the Torah. Al derech, you're still on the way. That's the Mishnah. But sicho, your conversation, that's the Talmud. Shekol sichatan divrei Torah. That everything they say is divrei Torah. Amar of Shizbi Mishum Rabbi. It's really saying all of them, but it's clearly saying the Talmud are the best. Amar of Shizbi Mishum Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. My dichtiv lo yachroch rimiyat sedo. Okay, the deceitful hunter will not be able to roast his meat. Lo yechyeh v'lo ya'arich yamim tzayad aramai. Those who capture in a deceitful manner, okay, will not live a long life. Okay, and they mean someone who kind of grabs his Torah like a hunter who's being deceitful will not live a long life. Rav Sheshet Amar tzayad aramai yachroch. Okay, it's very unclear how to read this because it just says lo yachroch, but I think some people say it's why is he saying he's a ramai? It's not exactly deceitful, and what exactly do we mean by this? There's different ways to read this line, but anyway, let's see the explanation. Ki ata Rav Dimi Amar, mashal tzayad shetzad sipurim. Here we're going to explain it. Someone who captures birds. Imagine if you capture birds. It's not exactly you're a ramai, like you trick, but we'll see what you do here. You capture. Im rishon meshaber knafav. Now imagine you're hunting birds. If every time, now we're not talking about people who shoot birds, okay? You somehow catch the bird in your hands, and then you put it aside, and then you go and you run to capture the next one. Now what's going to happen? The bird's going to fly away. So if you capture it, but before you go and hunt the new one, what do? You break its wings, and then the bird can't fly. Then mishtamer, then everything you hunt will be captured. V'im lav ein mishtamer, and if not, none. This is like those who learn Torah. If you learn Torah and you keep jumping to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, but you don't actually capture and fully absorb what you learned right already, then you're not going to remember. Okay, this is a little bit not so great for Daf Yomi learners. Don't worry, we'll have some better lines about Daf Yomi learners later today. But right, it's basically saying, take what you learn, review it again until you get it, and then start learning something new. I'm not saying don't learn Daf Yomi. Amar, this should be, I think, Rava, Amar Rav Schora, Amar Rav Huna. My dichtiv hon mehevel yima'et v'kovetz al yad yirabeh. Okay, if you make a lot of money out of nothing, it will go away. But if you take in a little bit at a time, you'll have plenty. If you try to grab too much Torah all at once, you won't end up getting anything. But if you learn a little bit at a time, you keep adding more and more and more, you will learn more. Okay? Amar Rava, Yadei Rabbanan laha milta ve'avrei ala. Okay, if you're feeling bad about Daf Yomi, don't worry. He says, oh, the rabbis know this, but they do it anyway. Okay, they know they're not supposed to do it this way, but they do it anyway. Okay, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, ana avadata v'ikayim biyadei. We actually did it the right way, and in fact, our Torah has lasted. Tanu Rabbanan, Ketzad Seder Mishnah. How did we learn all of this oral Torah? How did it get passed down? Moshe lama mipi gvura. Okay, we're now going to see the importance of reviewing things. Moshe learned straight from God. Nichnas Aharon, okay, and as Moshe went into all, goes into where God is, he learned straight from God. Then comes in Aharon. V'shinala Moshe Pirko. Moshe teaches Aaron. Nistalek Aharon v'yashav l'smo Moshe. So first Aaron is standing right in front of him. Then Aaron moves to his left, to Moshe's left. Nichnesu banav v'shina lehem Moshe Pirkan. Now in come Aaron's sons. Moshe teaches them. Nistaku banav. Then they move to the side. Elazar yashav liyamin Moshe. Elazar moves to the right of Moshe, one of Aaron's sons. V'itamar l'smol. Itamar goes to the left. L'smol Haron. Sorry, he goes to the left of Aaron, who's to the left of Moshe. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, what do you mean? Moshe. Why would Elazar end up on Moshe's right side? You're the right-hand man, right? Always the right is the more important. Obviously, Aaron must move from the left to the right once his sons are done learning. So, Lo'olam Aaron liyamin Moshe. Choser, okay, back to our topic. Choser nichnesu zkenim. So now the sons move to the side, in come the zkenim. V'shina lehem Moshe Pirkam. Moshe teaches them the Torah. Nisaku zkenim nichnesu kol ha'am. So now the zkenim move to the side, and the whole nation comes in, or some people say those who were interested in learning straight from Moshe. V'shina lehem Moshe Pirkam. So now, how many times did Moshe teach? Nimtza b'yad Aharon. Aaron heard the Torah 4 times from Moshe. B'yad banav, they heard Shlosha 3 times. Ubiyad zkenim shnayim, ubiyad kol ha'am echad. What happens after this? Nistalek Moshe. Moshe leaves. Now v'shina lehem Aaron Pirkam. Now Aaron teaches it all again. So now everybody gets another time. Nistalek Aharon. So now Aaron leaves. Shanu lehem banav Pirkan. So now the sons teach it. Nistalku banav. Shanu lehem zkenim Pirkan. So then the zkenim teach to the people. Nimtza b'yad hakol arba'ah. So everybody, if you do the count, everybody learned it 4 times. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Mikan amar Rabbi Eliezer. Sorry. Chayav adam lishnot letamido arba'a pa'amim. From here, you learn when you teach something, you have to teach it 4 times. Okay, maybe we should have a daf shiur 4 times a day. You're supposed to teach 4 times. The kavachomer, and it's a kavachomer from here. Uma Aaron shalama mipi Moshe, uMoshe mipi Agvura. Aaron, who learned 4 times from Moshe, and Moshe had learned it directly from God. We're so much farther from the Torah being given from God, right? And Moshe must have known it well enough to teach it really well. And he still had to teach it 4 times. So all the more so, us who don't have a direct line to God, we basically have to teach it at least 4 times. Rabbi Akiva Amar, forget about 4 times. You have to repeat and teach your students until they get it. Doesn't matter how many times. Shneimar, again from the end of Sefer Dvarim, V'lamdat b'nei Yisrael, right? The pasuk is, and teach it the people, sima b'fihem, put it in their mouths. Minayin ad she'stura b'fihem, shneimar sima b'fihem, put it in their mouths until they can say it themselves. Right? We always say the sign of a good shiur is if people can walk out of the shiur and express what they learned, right? Remember, if you ask someone, they say, oh, it's great shiur, and then they come out and they say, what'd they teach? If they could summarize it for you, then it was clearly a great shiur. If they say, they talked about some idea, I don't know, then that's not great. Right? You have to be able to come out and express it. Okay, you have to put it before in their face. So you have to see the person and give it to them directly. Why didn't, going back to this story, why didn't everyone learn directly from Moshe? Why did he leave and then Aaron taught it? And right, so why didn't they all learn it from Moshe? Right, they wanted them to know that there's someone else. It's not just all dependent on Moshe. Right, that was part of the problem with the Cheda Egel. Right, it was you wanted to teach them that they can rely on other people also. V'neo Aaron v'nigmar mi Moshe v'le'alu banav v'ligmaru me Aaron v'le'alu zkenim v'lilfu mi banav v'lizlu v'lagmarinu l'kuli Yisrael. So then, why didn't you just have it? Moshe teaches Aaron, Aaron teaches the next teaches the next. Why did they do it in this way? That Moshe ends up teaching it 4 times. So they say, no, Kevan de Moshe mipiak gamar mistayim milta. He clearly heard it directly from God. They wanted everyone to have that direct connection from God. So therefore, he was going to be a better teacher because he heard it directly. Amar Mar. Now we're going back to this strange line. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo lama Aaron liyamin Moshe. Right? So now, liyamin Moshe choser. Clearly, after Aaron went to the left side of Moshe, then he's going to move to the right and not Elazar, his son, because obviously we're going to have Aaron on the right. So Kiman and Tanakama didn't think that. So Kiman Azla Hadatanya. So according to who does this Braita go like? The Braita says, Shlosha sheyum alchim baderech. There's 3 people walking on a path, and one is the rabbi. Harav be'emtza, v'gadol b'yamino, v'katam b'smolo. We're going to have the greater person to the right of the rabbi and the less great person to the left. There's a way you're supposed to walk. This is what we call a chot derech eretz, way of life that you're supposed to do in all sorts of ways of your life. So Rabbi Yehuda, so they say, Lema Rabbi Yehuda, we should say this is Rabbi Yehuda because Aaron had to be on the right, and Tanakama didn't think that was important. V'lo Rabbanan, we're going to say this doesn't hold like the rabbis. So they say, no, afilu tema Rabbanan, mishum tircha da Aharon. Once Aaron was on the left of Moshe, they didn't want to move him to the right, so they left him on the left. Why he started on the left, I didn't really understand. Okay, why he didn't just go to the right to begin with, I don't know the answer. Now we're going to have a story about Rabbi Preda and what a good teacher he was. And again, we go to the issues, and this I can very much relate to, the issues of concentration and problems with concentrating. Rabbi Preda Havaleahu Talmuda, he had a student. He would teach him something 400 times, and he would always learn it. One day, they said to Rabbi Preda, listen, we need you for a mitzvah. So Tana Levelo Gamer. So he started teaching a student. He wasn't going to stop teaching. He said, let me teach him, and then I'll go do my mitzvah. But what happened? The student wouldn't get it. Amarle, Ha'idna Maishna, what's happening today that you just don't get what I'm teaching you, right? Where are you today? You're not focused. Amarle, Midahi Shata da Amarle Lamar, Ikamilta de mitzvah. As soon as they said to you, listen, we need you for a Dvar mitzvah, Aschai Lidatem, I couldn't focus. Every moment I would say, Hashta Kaimar. My teacher's going to get up and leave any minute. But I was distracted, right? This happens to me when I have a lot on my head. I can't focus on my learning. So I'll try to get rid of all those things. And then I'll go learn later at the end of the day once I finish things. When you have so much in your head, it's very hard to focus on learning. So he says, I was distracted by the fact that you're going to leave any minute. Amarle havda'atech, right? Sit down, focus yourself. Va'atnele, I'm going to teach you. Don't worry. I'm not leaving until you get it. He taught it another 400 times. Nafka bat kala, a bat kala, a heavenly voice came down, va'amarle, and said to him, Nichalach de lisfulach arba me'ashnei, do you want to get 400 extra years to your life? Or do you want you and your future generations to get olam haba? So what does he obviously say? Amar de niske ana v'darei la'alma da'ate, right? We want to get olam haba. Amar lena kadosh baruch hu, God set up in the heavens, lo zo v'zo, give him both. Okay, basically we're saying this is the sign of a great teacher. Okay, a great teacher makes sure their students understand everything to the end. Amar Rav Chisda, right, which requires obviously a ton of patience. Amar Rav Chisda, ein Torah niknet ela b'simanim. How do you, another way of acquiring Torah? Okay, let's try to go through. We had expressing it in words. We had humility, right? Not thinking of yourself as being great. We had repetition, reviewing, not moving on to something until you get the first part, right? Learning slowly, okay? And now we get to make yourself mnemonic devices to remember things. Shneamar sima b'fihem, al tikha sima, put them in your mouths. Don't read it as put it in. Ella simana, okay? This is often they switch sin and samach, okay? It says make a siman out of them, okay? Notations. Shama Rav Tachlifa mima'arava. Shama Rav Tachlifa mima'arava. Azal Amri Kamed Rabbi Avau. So he from Israel heard this. He said before Rabbi Avau, Amar, Atun mehata matninale. You learn it that way. Anan mehacha matninale. We learn it from a different pasuk. Hatzivi lach tziyunim. Okay, this is when it talks about the I thought this. It's not. This is in Yirmiyahu. Hatzivi lach tziyunim, simi lach tamruim. Right, like traffic lights, okay, that's a tamur in modern Hebrew, like a ramzor. Make yourself signs, okay? Derech halachta shuvi b'tulat Yisrael shviya elei rayach ele. So, what's a tzivulach siyunim, similach, etc.? Asi asut siyunim laTorah. Make yourself reminders how to remember the Torah. Umay mashma dahait siyun lamashma desimanim. How do we know siyun is a siman? Dechtiv ure'ei etzam adam ubana etzlo siyun. Okay, this is like a siyun kever. It's a sign that there's somebody, a dead body here. Rabbi Eliezer Amar Mehacha, he says, I'll learn it from a different pasuk. And more lechochma chotiat, I promise you we get to something that says why you should be learning Daf Yomi or something good about it, even though we kind of knocked it before. And more lechochma chotiat, right? It's chochma should become like your sister. Umoda lebinat tikra. What is this word umuda? Asay mudaim la Torah. Make signs for the Torah. That's where he learns it from. Not a tzivulach tziyunim, but make signs for the Torah. Modaim. Rava learns it differently. Asay moadim la Torah. Make yourself times to learn Torah. This is why Daf Yomi is so amazing, because you set a set time every day that you learn, whether it's a set time or not a set time, but it's a daily thing that you take with you. So make moadim la Torah. V'hainu da'amar avdimi bar chama. We're going to go until the next section here, to the two dots. Hainu da'amar avdimi bar chama bar dosa, mai dechtiv, Lo b'shamayim hi, as we ended yesterday's daf with Bruya, famous. Now we're going to get to the famous pasuk about lo b'shamayim hi. I'll read you the verses of the Torah. They're beautiful verses. It says, the Torah is lo b'shamayim hi lemor miyalel lanu hashamayim v'yikachel lanu. That someone shouldn't, it's not in the heavens, that someone should say, who's going to go up to the heavens and bring it down for us? V'yashmianu otav v'nasena, and they will bring it, right, that we will hear it and do it. V'lo me'ever layamhu, and it's not over the sea. Lemor mi avor lanu et ever ayam v'yikachel lanu v'yashmianu otav v'nasena, that someone's going to have to go far and bring it to us, right? It's basically saying this is the Torah is accessible to you. It's not far away in the heavens. It's not me'ever layam. Okay, it's accessible to you. Obviously, this pasuk is darshan in many ways, and we're going to see a few today. So, what does it mean, lo b'shamayim hi? She'im b'shamayim hi, ata tzarich la'alot achareha. V'im me'ever layam hi, ata tzarich la'avor achareha. This means that you have to do whatever it takes to get Torah, meaning it's not b'shamayim, but if it were in the heavens, guess what? You'd have to go up to the heavens and get it. And if it was me'ever layam, you'd have to go across the sea and get it. You have to do whatever it takes to acquire Torah. That's the first explanation. Rav Amar, lo b'shamayim hi, lo timtza b'misha magbia da'ato alav k'shamayim. Right? Someone who puts their head in the clouds, right? Or not their head in the clouds, that's not the right phrase, but someone who says, I'm so great, and right, I'm like the heavens, then you're not going to be able to acquire Torah. Goes back to our theme of arrogance. Someone who says, I have so much knowledge, vast like the sea, right? You're not going to acquire Torah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, lo b'shamayim hi lo timtza b'gasei ruach. This is the same, where it's not in those who are arrogant. But lo me'ever layam, he explains in a different way, lo timtza lo b'sachranim v'lo b'tagarim. You're not going to find it among the peddlers and those who are traveling all the time for work. Because if you're traveling all the time, you're not going to make the time to sit and learn. Don't be traveling all the time, but sit where you are and learn Torah. Okay, maybe this is a good message for all of us who can't travel now, right? That it's a good time to sit and learn Torah and to be focused on that. With those nice ideas of the importance of Torah and the importance of whether it's Daf Yomi study or any other study, and maybe it's a good lesson for us to try to review. With Daf Yomi, you could always say, well, I'll review it the next cycle. In any case, with this, have Chag Sukkot Sameach, and when you read Kohelet, you can think of some of the ideas we discussed today. Okay, Chag Sameach, everybody.